This is Extra Paycheck Podcast, episode number 61.
You're listening to Extra Paycheck Podcast, where you will learn how to build and grow your own successful online business. Now, here's your host, Alex Soul.
Welcome to yet another episode of Extra Paycheck Podcast. This is episode number 61, and this week's special guest is Vicky Berman. Vicky runs a successful food blog at avocadopesto.com, so a lot of great advice and tips in today's episode. Enjoy today's show. Hi, Vicky, and welcome to the Extra Paycheck Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Please tell us a little bit more about yourself and what is that you do as a business.
A little bit more about myself. I run a food blog called Avocado Pesto, which I started in the end of 2010, just kind of as a hobby when I started my first full-time job after graduating from college. And from there, it's grown over the years and now has become something that I work on full-time and treat as kind of my main business.
Mm-hmm. So full-time meaning that I guess pretty much most of your income comes from that blog.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so the first question would be, okay, so 2010, it's been, well, let's say roughly 5 years since we're just, the beginning of 2016. And there's so many food blogs, right? There's like thousands of them probably.
Right.
And you started yet another food blog. Let's just call it this way, right? Yet another food blog. And it did grow into something rather big. Why do you think your blog sticks out from all the other food blogs out there?
I think one of the things that is important, specifically in food blogging, because there are so many different food blogs out there, is having a specific niche and finding exactly which type of recipe you want to create and which type of person you want to cater to. So my blog, for example, focuses on healthy meals made from scratch, catering to a variety of restrictive diets, including gluten-free, vegan, dairy-free, vegetarian. And I think that's very important in order to distinguish yourself so that people know you as the person that shares, gluten-free, dairy-free recipes, or a person that cooks only 30-minute meals or writes the cost for each meal, something like that, as opposed to just trying to post every kind of recipe there is and getting completely lost in the, thousands or millions of blogs that are out there and that keep popping up.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. And I think there are a lot of blogs like allrecipes.com and like really, really huge websites that have been around since, the beginning of internet. And personally, I think there's no way anyone would be able to compete with them anymore. But that's kind of their thing, they're the authorities that give you all kinds of recipes, like everything and anything you wish. So I really like what you did. And in online marketing, we often say, especially to the beginners, we tell them niche it down until it hurts.
Right.
Make it very, very, very targeted. And then you actually have a chance of, competing with all the other websites out there.
Right. I think sort of the distinguishing your specific brand is what's specifically important. I think, websites like All Recipes that have been around, probably for 10 years or so, they have been able to kind of post any kind of recipe and that has worked for them. But I think as the blogging world kind of continues to evolve, it's really important to do something specific so that you do stand out.
And totally true. And honestly, I've been noticing this kind of a trend. I would want to call it a trend for the past few years, maybe starting 2014 or so. I've been noticing people kind of switching away from bigger sites and huge publications and going towards more targeted, smaller blogs, because in my opinion, there's so much noise on these big websites that we just get lost and we don't value what they give us anymore. Even publications that I used to respect a lot, and I still do, such as Huffington Post, right? I noticed that they started trying these clickbait kind of titles, and often they post information which is great, but also they post information that's really mediocre at best, and all they want is just you to click on the title and go to that article so they may make some ad revenue. And I think this is one of the reasons why blogs such as Avocado Pesto are picking up and will be picking up quite a bit more in the next few years, because people are going back to blogs, people going back to niche subjects and smaller but yet more in-depth things.
No, I completely agree. And I think that is becoming especially more noticeable with the different opportunities to work with, large name brands that I feel like is really becoming more popular, specifically in the blogging niche, because the companies realize that, people go onto these sites and they trust these sites more than maybe, the enormous publications that don't have a real face behind them.
Mm-hmm. And is that something that you see, or is that something that you're experiencing with your own blog as well?
Both. Yeah, it's something that I see a lot more now on other blogs and with my own blog myself, that companies will reach out to me directly about a partnership with them, working with them, creating recipes for them, either on my site or on their site, or organizing giveaways. And I think that's because these large companies are realizing that they're getting a lot of impressions by working with bloggers, and that a post that a blogger writes about a certain company or a recipe that they make kind of lives on forever, and that gets archived in Google and, can continue to be searched for years, as opposed to an advertisement in a magazine or TV where, the magazine gets printed for the month and then, tossed out, and that's it. That ad is never going to be seen again.
Mm-hmm. That is, that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, this is the reason why I prefer getting free traffic, as I call it. Basically, writing really good content and having it ranked or linked to, as opposed to paying for your traffic. Paying for, let's say, Facebook ads or AdWords ads. Because the thing is, yes, you could set up a good campaign, pay-per-click campaign, let's say, but that's the problem. As soon as you stop paying, you stop getting visitors to your website or your business, whatever the business might be. And when you put out great content out there, as you said, it lives on for years and years and years to come. So it's a big initial effort, and sometimes it's hard to get it ranked, and it takes time to get it to the top of search results. But once you are there, it's gonna, pay back like tenfold, if not more.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And Vicky, so the next question here is, also about your blog. So you've picked a really interesting niche. It's also, I know, a niche in demand, and a lot of people are, cooking stuff, and a lot of people are cooking, as you mentioned, gluten-free recipes and vegan stuff. But, just picking your niche is not enough. You grew your blog by doing something to it. Would you be able to tell us how you've been marketing your blog, and what do you think contributes to a big part of your success?
I think that it's definitely, several factors together. I think that, definitely selecting the specific niche, working on and figuring out which recipes are currently trending or which ones you think will be popular, and figuring out which direction to take your recipes based on seasonality or, what is the latest food trend helps as well. And improving your photography. This year I'm planning on getting more into videos, because I think that is what's going to be the next biggest thing for food blogs and recipes, is recipe videos specifically. And also networking with other bloggers, I think, is huge. And it's something that I didn't do as much in the first couple of years when I had my blog, and didn't realize the net positive effect. When a lot of bloggers kind of join together and work together to share each other's content or participate in group giveaways, and, just kind of the momentum builds up when, it's a group of 5, 10, 15 people all helping each other grow.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And this is something that I think I'm in the same place as you are. I don't connect enough, I think, with people in the same industry as I am. But I'm trying, well, first of all, this podcast being one of the reasons is, well, the main reason is to have experts and influencers and entrepreneurs like you tell your story and share your advice with people who want to start a business or who started a business, especially online, and they're looking for inspiration and ideas. But another reason why I love doing the podcast, and even if people would just stop listening to it completely, I probably would keep doing it because I love connecting with people like you. And it has happened already in the past, and this podcast is quite new. Well, I think it's still new. It's not even a year old. In April is going to be 1 year since this podcast is alive. And I've already had some, how should I put it? I didn't make any deals or anything of that sort with my guests, but I have helped a few of my guests get certain things done. And some of my guests made me some offers and help with, let's say, content promotion, whatever it is. And when that started happening, I was like, wow, why wasn't I doing that before? Communicating with people in your industry is crucial.
Right.
And as you mentioned, we have the same goal. We're sharing the same goal, all of us. So why not help each other to, achieve those goals? Because we can do that as a community. It's a lot easier to do than individually and as a solopreneur, as we often refer it to.
Right. And I think it's become so much easier to network and to find these people in these groups through social media. You can find like-minded bloggers and groups on Facebook. There are, I'm sure, hundreds of them for, any blogging category, or, find people to connect with on Instagram or Pinterest or Twitter. So I think it's definitely a different blogging environment than it was, in 2008 or 2007.
And Vicky, I guess content. What would you say about the importance of content on your website?
I think content is obviously incredibly important, and continuously and consistently putting out good content and making sure that everything is aligned with, like I said, your niche and your voice, and putting up the right photographs and, having a consistent writing style. I think all of that kind of carries through, so that people can really remember who you are and what your blog is and kind of keep coming back when they know exactly what they're getting.
Totally. And I agree with you here that it's the quality of the content that matters a lot, but consistency is not any less important, because honestly, there are some blogs that I follow and that I love, and they only do one post a month, but that one post that they do is mind blowing, right? And I know that I don't have to run after that blog. I know that once a month I could come, and I'm sure that there's going to be something new there. So, if there's a blog that kind of interests me, and I start reading them, and I see that they post new stuff twice a week, and I really like the stuff, but then they stop posting for 2 months, and then they post again, and then 3 months passes by and they don't post, and then they post every week again. It's, I simply wouldn't follow this kind of blog because it's not consistent for me as a reader either. I don't want to go to your website every time and try to figure out if there's something new. I want to kind of have an idea of how often you put out your content.
Right.
And I know that I could come back at specific intervals or periods of time, and I'll find something valuable there. How are you doing it with your blog? What's your schedule? Let's call it that.
My goal is to post between 2 and 3 times a week. So I post 2 or 3 recipes each week, and have been sticking to that for years. And then every week on Sunday, I send out a newsletter where I send out a weekly meal plan for 5 weeknight dinners, which are all from recipes from my blog. They could be recent recipes. They could be recipes from years ago. So I put that together for my email subscribers.
That is very interesting. And also, I wanted to compliment you on your photos on Instagram.
Oh, thank you.
I had a breakfast an hour ago or so, and Before this interview, I looked at your Instagram and I started drooling. I'm like, oh my
Thank
God,
you.
that looks so good. And I've seen you have also a lot of pictures, but you're also growing your following on Instagram, which I think for businesses like yours could be very, very beneficial.
Yes, I think for food blogs and because of the nature of how visual food photography is, Instagram, I think, is a huge platform, and I am still fairly new to it. I'm a little bit of a late adopter in the social media game, so it takes me a little bit to catch on to a new social media platform. But I understand the importance of Instagram, and Instagram is not so much for getting clickbacks to your site or generating traffic, but it really is more about engagement and really engaging with the different readers and having conversations with fellow bloggers and followers. So that's another goal for this year, is to really build my Instagram following.
Yeah, and that's a great goal to have, Vicky. Okay, now I'd like to ask you to take us back to the not beginning of your blog, but to the time when you've decided that you shouldn't be looking for a full-time job, or that you shouldn't be working a regular job, as we call it, and you should be concentrating on your blog full-time. Because this is a hard decision, and it's a decision that a lot of people can't make, even though they can afford it, or maybe it's perfect timing to make this jump and start working on your online business full-time. But a lot of people are scared of doing this. How did it happen to you, and what helped you make this decision?
Well, I would say that when I was graduating from college in 2010, I had already predicted and decided for myself that the 9-to-5 working world would be miserable and not for me. So I made up my mind in 2010, but I didn't really know what else I could do. So I started a job in, a company working in accounting and finance, and did that for 2 years. And just realized that I couldn't live my whole life working like that. So during that period, I started my food blog, and then also started a travel blog with my boyfriend, and we kind of set out to backpack around the world for 2 years. So that was kind of the first initial jump and kind of the departure from the traditional workforce. And I think kind of being away and traveling and working on 2 blogs at the same time, and then coming back from our trip, made me realize that I didn't have to go back to the traditional workforce, and I didn't have to find a job in an office, that I could instead continue to try and grow this blog and turn this into my full-time income stream and my full-time business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of stuff that you said that I totally can relate to, because I had the same kind of feelings about jobs, and I did have an office job and also really didn't like it. Well, that's one of the reasons I think a lot of entrepreneurs start something on their own, because they simply don't see themselves doing that, a job for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And for those listening to this episode, by the way, I had an interview with Vicky's boyfriend, Dave Schneider, and you could listen to that in episode 34, and you could find it at extrapodcast.com/34. And Dave is running his own online business, which is not avocado pesto. So I find this really cool that you guys are like, you're this couple of people that each run their own business, but you're both kind of doing the same thing. You're working online, and you're not tied up to a specific spot. You don't have to go to a job. You could get work done regardless of where you are in the world.
Right. It definitely helps that we're both on the same track.
By the way, Vicky, where are you right now?
Currently in the Boston area, so in between international trips.
Okay, so you guys are still traveling a lot.
Yes, we just spent 3 months in Central America. We were house sitting for 2 months in Costa Rica, which allowed us to continue to work. But we were, close to the beach in a tropical climate.
Yeah.
And then we traveled around in Nicaragua and Panama for a few weeks. And now we'll be heading to South America, where we've never been before. So we'll be heading to Colombia in 2 weeks to also do, whereas before we were just kind of backpacking for 2 years nonstop. Now we do a bit more of slow travel where we pick a base, stay there for a month or so, get some work done, and then mix in some trips.
Makes a lot of sense. And I love traveling as well, Vicky. And this is one of the reasons I am also doing an online business. And I have been doing that for years because, well, yeah, I love traveling. And if you don't mind, I'll ask you a question here because in my episode 43, I gave some tips to people on how to stay efficient and productive while traveling, because that's what I'll be doing as well in the next 4 months after recording this. And maybe you could share some tips with us because I think it's really hard and it takes some special effort or special planning if you want to work on your online business and also travel the world, because you're not sitting comfortably at home in front of your computer getting work done whenever you want. You kind of have to adapt to your traveling plans and situations. So how do you manage to travel yet still get work done?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. that I think a lot of people do struggle with, and I think you don't even understand how challenging that can be until you try to do it yourself. Because I think it might sound like, well, what's the big deal? You wake up, you do some work, then you go out and sightsee. But I do think that changing environments can affect your sort of productivity and efficiency. But I think having a set plan every day and setting aside specific pockets of time like that, you're going to wake up, you're not going to go out for 3 or 4 hours, and you'll just sit and get your work done, and having some sort of schedule, whether you work from 8 to 12 and then you go out, or you go out in the morning and then you work from 2 to 6 or late at night, whichever works best for you. But I think it's really important to create some sort of a routine, because otherwise it is really easy to just get wrapped up in travel and get sort of lost in your own work and not be able to properly focus on it.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And I've done that more than on one occasion, getting lost and not getting any work done. And there's so many those scammy websites where people are promising to teach you how to make millions of dollars. And often there's this picture of a guy and his laptop, like he's sitting on this beautiful beach,
right.
And you see the sunset behind him, right? And people surfing. And there's a caption, something like, I work 10 minutes while on this beach and I make like $10,000
right.
a week. And I look at that, I'm like, guys, this laptop lifestyle, as we call it sometimes, is great. And sometimes we do get some of that. But most of the time, it's totally not that.
No, it's not that. I've never worked on the beach. I mean, you can't see your laptop screen with the glare of the sun. I mean, that image is completely unbelievable.
That is totally true. And the fact that also, if you're just sitting there, I think it's so easy to get distracted and so easy to order a few drinks and be like, screw that.
Right, yeah.
I'm going to go for a swim.
Exactly.
So, Vicky, what do you think is the future of your online business? Would you keep concentrating on growing avocado pesto, or do you think you'll be branching out to something else or maybe working on new projects?
I think that overall I would love to stay in sort of the food and recipe side of things. But I think that if I reached a point where I felt like I was kind of done growing my food blog and wanted to do other things, I think offering cooking classes, whether it was in, one specific place or I offered them when I moved around. So something like cooking classes or food tours, or developing some sort of food product that I could sell to local bakeries or set up a food delivery service. So lots of food related ideas. And for the 2 years when I was working after college, I also was partnering with two other girls who had started a catering company. So the three of us together also ran a catering company, which I loved and which was an incredible experience, and something that I would potentially also like to start up again myself in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think this is kind of the key to your future success as well, because you're sticking to this industry that you're passionate about, and that by now I think we can easily say that you're an expert in many, many fields related to cooking and recipes and you know, the industry in itself. And I think it's a lot easier to succeed in something that you love doing, regardless which direction you take. As you said, doing offline classes, training, or food tours, whatever it is. But as long as it's related to your industry and you're passionate about it, I think it makes it a lot easier and enjoyable to run these kind of businesses and to grow them.
Right. I completely agree. And my passion is cooking, and specifically, healthy cooking and cooking from scratch, and kind of showing people that, you don't have to be using a ton of processed food or, eating out all the time, that you can eat healthy. And it's something that I truly believe has to do with, the way you feel in your general state of health. And that a lot of that is affected by the food that you eat, the things that you put in your body. So any kind of way that I can share that on a large scale, whether it's, behind a computer screen, just, people making and following my blog all over the world, or, more specifically where I cook directly for people or teach them about nutrition and healthy eating. So any of those things are, really in line with my core beliefs.
Yeah. And in the past, I've started a lot of niche websites, and a lot of them failed. The ones that failed, but there are a lot more that failed compared to those that actually made it. And I'll give you one example. One of the niche websites that I had, it was a website that I created. First problem was that I created with the sole purpose of making money, which I think is really wrong, especially when you start an online business like a blog. It's only now that I realize that this is not the right mindset. If your only reason is to make money out of it, chances are it's going to fail. Second reason why it failed is that website was about office shredders. Because I saw on Amazon, there's a lot of office shredders selling for thousands of dollars. And some are going for like 10 grand. Can you imagine that? A shredder that costs $10,000?
Right.
And I thought, well, the commissions on those things are really great. So this is what I should talk about. I should start a blog about shredders. But, to be honest with you, I don't care about shredders at all. And writing every single article for that blog was such a pain. Because I had to do probably like 10 hours of research to write a really short, like 500-word article, which read like, I don't know like what, but it didn't read like an interesting article or even valuable article. It was just blah. And I started a lot of these websites back in the day, and I quit all of them. I destroyed all of them because, once again, that's one of the secrets. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, or at least if you don't really enjoy what you're doing, it's bound to fail. There's no way you're going to make it work.
Right. I think I completely agree. I think that a lot of those, different things that people are kind of thinking are, get rich quick techniques, they really just distract you from, focusing in on what you really want to or need to do in the long term. Because I think some of those, different strategies, methods, websites, will make money. But I think, in the long term, in the long run, they're not something that you will want to be involved in, so it's almost just, it's just distracting you from figuring out what it is that you want to be doing and just delaying that whole process.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think it's a good idea to start a website about something that you like. It can be like a simple hobby, right? But I usually suggest people to start a blog about their hobby and just write in it as often as they can for the simple purpose of practicing your writing, figuring out how to set up a blog, how to get people to reading a blog. And with time, while you're practicing, you should pay a lot of attention and thinking what is that you're passionate about. And Vicky, as you just mentioned, try to figure out what kind of niche or industry even would you want to be involved in for the next, 5, 10, 20 years or the rest of your life possibly.
Right.
And this is this is where we should all concentrate.
Exactly.
And I have a question for you, Vicky. And this question, well, your answer will go out to all the listeners who haven't started a business yet. A lot of people also are scared to start their own venture online, especially. And especially when we're talking about blogs, because people say, well, I'm not an expert. Yes, I love playing guitar, let's say, or I love cooking, or I love traveling. But who am I to give the advice to people? I'm not an expert. I didn't go to the, culinary school for 10 years. What would you tell to those people?
I have to say, just do it. Just start. Just, hit publish. I mean, it's just, I think a lot of people, think too much into things and, you want to wait until maybe you're an expert or you have something perfect. You have the perfect, article or this or that. You go back and forth with it and you never, it's just, you just have to get it out there, and especially with something like blogging, I feel like it's incredibly low risk. It's not like opening a restaurant where you have to put in a huge monetary investment. With a blog, you can start one, today, tomorrow, any day. And I think the biggest thing is just getting over the fact that you might not be an expert, but by hitting publish and just getting out there, you'll get closer to becoming an expert in that field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that especially if you read a book or two on the specific subject, you are already more of an expert than 99% of people who've never read those books.
Right.
That's my understanding. Because what defines an expert? Where do we draw that line of saying, well, at this level, at this point, I'm an expert? It doesn't really exist for a lot of things. And this is why I love blogging, because as you mentioned, people tend to overthink it and overcomplicate it. And blogging is not necessarily about being an expert. It is about becoming an expert, because the more you write about a certain subject, the better you get at it and more of an expert you become. But I think it's more of sharing and trying to create something around it, trying to create conversation, trying to create a community. And the whole expertise just comes with time.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing is just not to delay or procrastinate and just hit publish and just get it totally started.
I agree with you. And see, this is something that a lot of us do, or entrepreneurs that are doing something. It's something that everyone did at some point. We all procrastinated because of that fear. What if I fail? What if I'm not an expert? What if people laugh at me? And it's important to just take that action, jump into it, and try to figure out the rest as it comes at you.
Right. Mm-hmm.
All right, Vicky. So another question for you here is, maybe you could share one of the darkest moments with the listeners when it comes to your online business, to your entrepreneurship career. Have you had a moment when you thought, well, maybe this isn't for me, maybe this isn't going to work out, or maybe I should totally rethink what I'm doing because, well, maybe it's not the right thing to do?
There have definitely been those moments, and because, sometimes, blogging is obviously, difficult. I mean, you're just working on the computer, you're working by yourself. You don't necessarily have, coworkers or, a social work environment, and, you're the only person that can motivate yourself. You're not part of a team as you would be in a traditional office environment where, somebody else is giving you tasks and you complete them, and you have manager, supervisor you can ask questions. So I think with blogging, like, you have to be your own support system and motivator and, boss and employee, everything all in one. So I think sometimes it can definitely be difficult where, you're looking at your traffic and it's not, going well, or if you're trying to create a brand partnership and the companies don't want to work with you. And I think sometimes it can be really difficult to continue to motivate yourself and to kind of be the boss and the employee when you see that things aren't going as well. But, it's a long-term investment, I find. Blogging is. It's not, like a get rich quick type of thing. So you just have to kind of keep going and not look at, the day-to-day, steps back that sometimes have to happen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I'd like to ask you this advice, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to give an answer because that would be a really hard one. So let's say you start a blog about something that you like, and you keep writing, and you spend a fair amount of time working on that website, yet you're not seeing much traffic, or you're not seeing any growth to your blog. And you honestly have tried really hard to make it work, but it's just not working out. So which kind of deadline would you think you would give people to be like, okay, maybe this is a really wrong idea, or maybe you are really, really doing something wrong, and you should just stop and either reevaluate everything completely or just quit that whole idea and start something different? What would be like your deadline for a new project where you would be, you know what, that's not going to work out. I know I invested time, but I should quit now before I lose even more time?
That's a tough one. I think that's, a very sort of personal question for each person based on what their ultimate goal is, whether it's, to make X amount of money, whether it's to reach, so many page views, or, some other milestone. But I think it's important to, constantly be evaluating and reevaluating what you're doing, what's working, what isn't working, what needs to change, what you could do more of. But I think that if you find that nothing is working and you've really just done everything, then I think then setting, some sort of hard deadline, like the end of this year, if you're not at, X milestone, maybe it's time to do something else. I think that's important too, as well, to be realistic with yourself so that you don't feel like you've put in so much time into something that wasn't the right fit. Whereas, if you had taken a step back, you might have been able to find a better fit.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for this advice. And for me personally, it's also very hard to answer this question. And I get it quite often from my blog readers and podcast listeners. And as you mentioned, it's so hard to give this advice to a specific person because there are just so many factors that go into that. And I often get questions from people telling me that they've done everything and they've built their website and they're working on it and it's been 6 months and they're getting like 2 people per day to visit their website. And before, like let's say 2-3 years ago, I used to recommend things to people. I tried to figure out just, well, maybe it's a wrong niche, maybe you don't know who your customer is. And it never occurred to me at the beginning to be, okay, first of all, let me look at your website. Now when I started doing that, and sometimes people send me this website, which basically has a logo and a welcome post, and that's all it has, right? And then I ask people, like, well, you've been running this blog, as you're saying, for 6 months, and you told me you've done everything you could, but how come you only have one post in this 6 months? You can't expect anything happening if you're not, working on it properly. So that's the really hard part as well, to evaluate what is hard work and, what it means to me and what it means to you, because we see things very differently. Everyone does. But if I see that the website has been worked on a lot and there's high quality content, and to be honest, if it is a high quality content and it's getting posted often, chances are the blog is growing and is getting a lot of visitors and maybe even money as well. So oftentimes when it's not working out, chances are that it's not good enough. Either the content is not good enough, either it's not being posted often. So those people, I tell them, keep working. And look, if within a year you haven't figured it out, maybe the whole online business is not for you, or maybe you need to spend more time learning and understanding what it really is. Something like that. But it's a really hard advice to give to someone, I find.
I completely agree.
All right, Vicky. So one of the last questions here for the listeners, what would be your number one advice to any beginner entrepreneur, beginner blogger, besides the advice of just getting started? What would be another thing that you would recommend, which you think is crucial to a success of a blog?
I would say, and this is from my own personal experience, something that I should have done, from the beginning that I didn't, I would say is networking with other bloggers, finding a group of other bloggers in your niche, whether, you want to ask more successful bloggers, ask someone to mentor you, ask them for advice, or you want to find a group of people that are starting out at a similar time that you are, just finding a similar group of bloggers and kind of building your own tribe and growing, learning together, starting a mastermind group with them, communicating with them, sharing ideas. And I think that's incredibly important and something that I did not do in the beginning. And I think I would have helped me a lot and would have helped me grow faster in the beginning if I had.
Super important and great advice, Vicky. Thank you for that. And what I've been doing lately, I've been simply commenting on those influencers' posts. So I find people that I really admire and people that I think have achieved what I want to achieve in my business. And I would start by simply trying to make them notice me, right? So I would follow them on Twitter and Facebook. I would participate in their conversations. If they ask a question on Facebook, I would write an answer, and it wouldn't be a simple one-liner, something like, oh, cool question, something like that. I would actually take my time and give my honest opinion on a subject. I would comment on their blog post. I would try to kind of make them see my name a few times, right? And when I reach out to this person eventually, let's say by email, and here's another tip for the listeners, I don't just cold email those influencers. Most of them, if not all of them, have emailing lists, newsletters, and sign up. And besides getting great value that they're gonna email to you, you could simply reply to one of the emails when you want to get in touch with them, and it makes it so much easier to get an answer from them, because it's not just an email from someone, it's a reply from one of their subscribers, which they pay attention to. If it's a good influencer, they will pay attention to the replies that come into their inbox. And a lot of people are scared to get in touch with those influencers because they're like, well, he's not even going to care about me. Who am I? I'm nobody. They have no time. And it's totally not true. A lot of these big guys, as I want to think of them, or I call them, they are totally approachable, and a lot of them will find that 3 minutes or 5 minutes in their day to actually reply to your email if it's something important or of interest. You can't just say hi to them and expect an answer, and you can't write an essay of 5,000 words and expect them to read it. It's way too long. But drop them a few lines, tell them something interesting, or tell them something that you think they would be compelled to replying to, and you can totally get in touch with them. You could ask them a question, and as Vicky, as you just mentioned, you could probably with time build some kind of community and have them involved in it, which will benefit everyone involved.
Right. And I think that's how networking works, that it's not just sending somebody an email saying, wow, you've built a successful blog, tell me your secret. It's
That's a good
it's
one.
building that relationship up over time, like you mentioned, commenting, engaging with their posts, then sending them some sort of email that's personalized and, continuing along those lines.
Yeah, totally. That's a great way to get in touch with people and to build relationships, which would help you out eventually. All right, Vicky, thank you for sharing that. And before you go, I'd like you to share resources or links where people could find out more about you and your business as well.
You can find my food blog at avocadopesto.com, or you can send me a direct email to Vicky, Vicky, at avocadopesto.com. And you can find me on all social media, also Avocado Pesto on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Love to hear from anyone if you had any questions about recipes, eating, nutrition, or we're looking for any specific type of recipe. I'm always happy to help.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Vicky. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation. All your tips, suggestions, and experiences are well appreciated.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Extra Paycheck Podcast. As usual, I will be putting up show notes page at extrapodcast.com/61, where you will be able to find resources, links, and other things mentioned in today's episode. Also, head over to extrapodcast.com/iTunes in order to subscribe to the show, leave a rating and a review, which will help me tremendously. Thank you so much once again, and I'll talk to you next Monday.